So hopefully we have now connection with everyone. Welcome everyone to our first UK webinar on how to fund your marketing budget with product. We're very fortunate to have the chance to talk to three senior marketeers from the retail sector on their experience over the last year and the part that Active has played in helping their businesses to achieve more. If you want to ask any questions, please write them in the questions and answer section and we'll cover them off at the end. So a big warm welcome to our panelists. We have Lucy Auld, Head of Marketing at Freixenet Copestick, which includes their online offering Slurp. We have Gary Taylor, Director of Acquisition Marketing at Bloom & Wild, and Tony Holdway, former Chief Marketing Officer at Dreams, having held senior marketing positions at a host of leading brands such as Domino's Pizza, House of Fraser, WH Smith, and most recently, Pret Manger's Interim Global Chief Customer and Growth Officer. Welcome to you all. Thank you very much for being part of the panel for our first UK webinar. So, as we all know, retail sector took a big hit last year with sales down 1.9% compared to the previous year, the largest annual fall on record. However, in the first 3 months of lockdown, online retail managed to move from 20% of all retail spending to 34% in a matter of 3 months. So there were plenty of winners if your business found itself on the right side of the pandemic. So Gary, if I could start with you, Bloom & Wild raised £75 million in January and has more recently bought Dutch company Bloom to become the leading flower and gift delivery company in Europe. How's the year been for you? And has Bloom & Wild changed anything what it was doing previously?
Hi Mark, thanks for having me on the panel. Yeah, it's been a very interesting last 12 months or so for us. As you said, we've been one of the very lucky businesses that have been on the right side of this pandemic, and we were not able only to continue to trade, but we actually saw demand for our product actually increase quite dramatically, certainly in that first lockdown and then in the previous lockdowns that we've seen since. And we've been lucky in the sense that our supply and production facilities have been deemed essential, and we've been able to continue to trade throughout. I think, I guess like the reason for the demand uptick is kind of self-explanatory. People unable to see loved ones have been wanting to kind of replace that that interaction with a kind of virtual hug. So I know that lots of other e-commerce brands that I've spoken to have seen the same kind of trends. In terms of what we've changed, I think like our strategies remain like remarkably the same. Like we've been around for 7 or 8 years now, and our vision is to become the not only the UK but Europe's leading flower brand, and you know perhaps beyond that too. And so our strategy's not changed. What I think the pandemic has allowed us to do is accelerate some of our previous plans. So one of the things that we've done, for instance, is we've started to use brand TV. So we were using DRTV pre-pandemic. I think we've rapidly moved into more brand media, which we might come on to more, I guess. And you know, this was always planned. However, you know, the increases in revenue, et cetera, and our success over the past 12 months have allowed us to really accelerate growth. And then on Bloom and the funding, yeah, I mean, it's super exciting. They've been around for a similar amount of time as us. They've got similar goals of becoming a loved floral brand. However, to date, it's quite nice actually. We've concentrated on quite different things. They've been a subscription brand for the majority of their lifetime, only starting to look at e-commerce in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. We've always been like a one-off gifting platform, so there's lots of synergy there. Geographically, they're in the Netherlands and Benelux and Denmark, countries that we don't operate in, and they're in the UK but in a much smaller way where we're the market leader. And we're both in Germany but at a much earlier stage, so there's quite a lot of synergy and like complementary ways of which we will like bring learnings to each of our businesses. So it's been a great fit, and we're both really excited now to drive growth over the next 12 months.
That's really interesting, thank you. So it sounds like, yeah, the plans were there, but you just managed to accelerate them, take that next step earlier. Yeah, thank you, really interesting. So Lucy, coming on to you, I imagine it's been probably more of a checkered story for you with Slurp on the one hand, your online offering, probably, you know, as Gary says, you know, being on the right side of the pandemic, but then the on-trade business probably being more of a struggle. How have you kind of weathered the storm, and you know, how's business been in the last year?
Yeah, absolutely. It has been a kind of mixed bag of a story for the last 12 months. I think, like to Gary's point, it's accelerated some of our our developments on Slurp. So that acquisition went through, and the sales just kind of rocketed. I mean, March and April last year was were really big months for Slurp, and then the rest of the year. And it was a bit of a shock, really, because it was a relatively small business. So the important thing for us was, have we got the infrastructure behind it to support it and to support that immense growth and so quickly? So what we were able to do is make sure that we have got a really flexible employees, and so that they were able to kind of be reposted to Slurp potentially from the on-trade. So essentially where areas of business were quieter, we could kind of redeploy them to help out on areas where it was busier. And that's just testament to the passion and the commitment of our staff that they were able to do that, which was great support to the business and really supported that resourcing up in the kind of short term. But yeah, so on-trade, was a really tough time for the on-trade team, but we found ways through it, and we've really worked hard to make sure that when the on-trade did come back on last year and more recently this year, we've been there at the forefront, making sure that we're supporting the on-trade, driving footfall to the bars and restaurants, and that's a really important part of our plan. And then off-trade, where we saw immense growth. I mean, I think everyone saw the headlines with people drinking more alcohol. And actually what we saw, the trend was that initially that a lot of people were drinking more still wine than sparkling wine for obvious reasons. They weren't having the kind of big celebrations. That did change actually as we went through. I think we were a little bit worried at the start with Freixenet having such a big sparkling wine portfolio. I think March was a relatively quiet month, but then things changed, and I think as people saw that we were in this pandemic for longer, they were celebrating and prepared to celebrate anything, sort of getting through the day. It's like, hooray, I've got through the day, I've done some homeschooling, I definitely deserve a Prosecco. So we saw a change. I think there was an initial swing to still wine, but we didn't, the brand didn't severely impact, which was fantastic. And what we definitely saw was a higher percentage of spend against our online grocery as well. So what we had to do is make sure we flexed our plans, whereby we had a lot of in-store support. We tweaked some of that and made sure that we had some more online support than we perhaps have in previous years. So it's about that kind of being able to make sure your plans can still flex and being able to react at pace. I think that was the other thing, that a big learning and something that we did was really see opportunities and be able to kind of capitalize on them.
I think what was fascinating about your answer was actually your ability to move people from one area to another, and also the business. Some of it's fortunate that you had a business that was that you could take advantage of a growing market. But I think for a modern company, that ability to transfer from one side of their company to another obviously has been really tested in the last year, and obviously you've come through with flying colours. Really interesting. Thank you, Lucy. So Tony, we lost a business together when you were at Pret, which clearly found itself on probably the thin end of the pandemic wedge. What's been your take on the last year, and what have you observed from retail businesses pivoting to adapt to the new circumstances?
Well, I think Pret's a good example of many retail businesses that historically it's relied on habitual behaviour. It's relied on people frequency and regularity of use, and people, always having their morning coffee there, always grabbing lunch there on the go, and of course all that habitual behaviour has been blown up, hasn't it, in the last year, as in our ability in Pret's instance, our ability to probably even be near a Pret, has diminished if we were commuting into London or we were in stations or airports. But it's not just Pret, it's many a retail business. I think particularly lower ticket retail businesses where you require frequency, that frequency's gone, and so I guess what myself and the Pret team were doing was trying to take Pret to people and make Pret more accessible beyond just the physical store location in terms of delivery, click and collect, mobile pay, all the functionality you would expect of a pure play digital business that probably hasn't existed up until a year ago at Pret. So, you know, and I think the debate is what will happen when the dust settles now. And I think it's unlikely that people. I can't speak for every business. It will be different by business, whoever you work for. But I think in general we're unlikely to go back into the office 5 days a week, are we? So I think that those 5 morning coffees or those 5 lunches is, if you simply fish with the same customer pool, that you've got 20, 40, 60% locked off your sales overnight, haven't you? And so, you know, I'd suggest in general people will be back in the office 2 to 3 days a week, and it won't be followed. So you've got to re-engineer your business for that. And I think Pret, that was about marketing, that was about getting out there, and it was also about digitization of services, which I've talked about, as in making Pret more accessible and more convenient digitally.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks, Tony. So just coming up to the changes that we've seen over the last year, do you think they would have happened anyway, just over a long time period? So hooking into what Gary was, you know, telling us earlier, or do you think there's now been a sort of permanent change in the way that brands are going to behave and plan their marketing strategy going forward? Lucy, do you want to just take that first?
Yeah, I think that that probably these changes would have happened, but potentially not to the same degree. And I think a lot of people have been forced into this sort of digital world that perhaps would never have kind of embraced it, but they're there now. And so I think some of these changes are definitely here to stay. Some are permanent, some are perhaps not. I think there's still a stat that says between 40 to 50% of people will revert to their pre-pandemic shopping habits. Whether that's to the same degree or not, I don't know. I think, you know, lots of things have changed. I think, you know, the fact that you can now get wine, or you have been for a long time, but you know how easy you've seen it's easy to get wine delivered to your door, really cost effectively, and to Tony's point, a cup of coffee delivered to your door. I think, you know, people now have massively bigger expectations about what is available to them, and that has really changed things. But I think that whole thing about there will be a huge amount of people who still revert to what they did before in terms of shopping and consumption. And so as marketeers, our plans, you know, they had to be omni-channel before. I don't know how many is bigger than omni, but it's like we've got to work across so many different channels now to make sure that we are targeting consumers and reaching them, because it's just sort of exploded in terms of how we can communicate with consumers and their expectations, and actually how different everyone is. I think probably consumer segmentation has changed somewhat as well. So quite a lot of challenges, I think, that sort of short-term flexibility, but long-term making sure you're staying true to your brand and your brand positioning, and not losing who you are by forever flexing what you're doing. It's a bit of a challenge, yeah. I'd say.
Yeah, quite a challenge. And also, you know, the stat you produced there, 40 to 50% of people probably resort to their, you know, previous behavior, but flip that on its head, that's almost half probably changed permanently, and that offers huge opportunities going forward.
Yeah, massive opportunity. And I think, like to Tony's point though, it's about understanding what those implications, and Gary was saying what those implications are to your business. How does that affect your business? And are you picking up that other 50% who used to do that? What are they doing now?
Yeah. So Tony, similar. What are your opinions on that? So change going forward.
I think to your original question, I think we probably saw in 3 to 5 months last year what we would have seen in 3 to 5 years. So I think this digital change and changing behaviour would have happened anyway, but at a massively slow pace. And of course it had to happen immediately, because if you wanted to shop physically in retail last March and April, you wouldn't have been able to. So I think it accelerated the change, but I think most of that change will stick, actually. You know, some won't. Again, it will vary by person, it will vary by sector, but I think the vast majority will stick unless there's a physical benefit. You know, Phil, if the shops are shut and they're in lockdown, then you can't shop there. Once they're open, of course, some people are going to be shopping there, but actually there has to be a physical benefit to the experience. Otherwise, go online. You know, if all the stuff's there and it's easier, quicker, more convenient, then why would you? You know, again, I mentioned lower ticket items earlier. Again, higher ticket items, that is where you probably need to touch and feel. If you're going to part with a lot of money, you probably need to go and look at it, touch it, feel it, just check it's the right purchase, you know, for you. And so I think lower ticket, if it's £3.99, you're going to take a chance, aren't you? So I think it will vary by ticket size.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean Dixon's Carphone, you know, make a big thing about their expertise in store, and that's clearly a, you know, good positioning because you need to go to the store to get that personal expertise. But and fashion could, you know, you could say that, you know, you need to try on the clothes, although these days obviously there's a lot of ASOS. But it does seem to me that unless you offer one of those a reason to go to store, then this latest behavior is really going to push much more purchasing online and really focus in on, okay, what is your position as a bricks and mortar you know, retailer here? What have you got to offer that I can't get online?
Yeah, and particularly, Mark, if you're round the corner. So if it's your high street round the corner, you might go there because it's a 2-minute drive and you know, fine. You know, it's not half a day wasted. That trip that you'd have made to, I don't know, Trafford Centre, Gateshead Metro, Thurrock, whatever, you know, that big outing better be worthwhile once you get there. Because if it's not, if you come away thinking, why have we just wasted half a day doing that, then you're going to be online next time, aren't you? And you won't go back.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. Gary, same question. You feeling
Yeah, I agree very much with what's been said. I think the shift would have happened anyway. I think like Tony's 3 to 5 years. I think I'd have said 10 years. I think the shift that we saw in our business last year, I think would have taken. And I just think that our early indication, our side, and the research that we've done suggests that we've very much reached people over the last 12 months who would never have considered shopping online, who will now consider shopping online or will continue to shop online, and that's got to be upside for us. And what we've seen, I mean, obviously restrictions have varied over the time period, but you know, even when restrictions eased last summer, we traded at a much elevated level to where we had expected to trade pre-pandemic, even when you could go to physical retail and things had returned to somewhat, you know, not fully normal, but like more like normal last summer. So I definitely think that it's here to stay. And Tony, I'm definitely one of those people that have got no desire to go to the Trafford Centre ever again in my life.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Tony, if you could, what do you reckon your biggest learning has been in the last year? You know, either personally as a consumer or as an observer of the retail sector.
I think the unpredictability of everything, and that sort of links to, you swiftly find out there is no plan. You know, as in you put a plan together and that just falls apart depending on what's happening, and lockdowns and tiering and everything changed so rapidly, month by month, week by week, didn't it, last year, that actually your plans fell apart, had to be changed at a moment's notice. And that's good. That doesn't teach me that there shouldn't be a plan, because that's crazy. But I think you know, the plans just had to change it very swiftly, and actually how people coped with that, how the people I was working with coped with that was incredible, because they were literally, you know, we would literally be booking media, cancelling media, changing creative, you know. It was very tough to plan what was happening more than a week ahead, you know, despite having a plan.
So the future DNA within a chief marketing officer is clearly going to have to be agility to new levels that they've never had before.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Gary, what would you say was your biggest learning over the last year?
I think I've got a couple. I think like on a kind of more high level, I think learning that we can all work remotely and that we can do it successfully, and and productivity of our team has been super high throughout, and I think learning that you can give your team flexibility to, we've introduced lots of stuff like core hours where people only have to work, you still have to work your full hours, but only between 10 and 4 is when you're expected to be online, and you can kind of flex alongside that. And to Tony's point around, will we ever come back to the office 5 days a week? I think for our business, like, definitely not. I think we still will have an office, but we've learned that we definitely don't need to have everybody in 5 days a week to be a successful company. And then Tony, your points also like resonate, like for the amount that we've learned in terms of like forecasting. Like it's a particular challenge for us. We've got perishable stock, and you have to kind of get it right on the nose. Not too much, not too little. And I think that we accelerated our learnings on that as a business as part of this like extreme period of demand.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, completely agree with Gary and Tony in terms of the working from home from Gary, and that ability to deviate from the plan very quickly from Tony. I think that flexibility and agility is so key, and that your team's understanding that just because you're taking something off the plan doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. I think that we had quite a lot of coaching from sort of more junior members of the team to understand that other opportunities come up, and viewing and understanding those opportunities and capitalizing on them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that you have to change your plans. It can open up all sorts of opportunities. But yeah, the change in creative at a week's notice is a headache for any marketeer, I think.
Yeah.
And trying to foresee, if you're going to go on air, it's like, will this message still be relevant in December, and you're planning it in August? It's like, no idea. We've got to try and work with that uncertainty. But I think it's been okay with working with the uncertainty, and that's been a big learning. And one other for us is a really important one, was listening and communicating with our consumers, and really being sensitive to them and understanding, so that we didn't just become a brand in the ether. We actually still maintain some relevancy with them and kept that kind of connection. I think that was really key, to be sensitive to how they were feeling.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Clearly, extremely customer focused. Thank you. In terms of so just coming in terms of how we've worked together, Active, and your brands you work on. Gary, if I could start with you, how have you found working with Active, and is it helping you achieve more for your business?
Yeah, like working with Active has been a pleasure. It's absolutely helped us to achieve more for our business. I think a couple of years ago, I think we've been working with you for probably 2.5, 3 years now. I think prior to that, I wasn't aware of barter or this kind of method of doing business. I think you guys did a very good job of making it clear and understandable for us, and it was definitely a period of getting our head around it. But since then, we've been able to use product to part fund our media costs, which is obviously a big win. We've done it a number of times. I think the biggest example that I can think of is we do like letterbox Christmas trees, which are an absolute perfect corporate gift, which I think has lent itself to this kind of relationship perfectly. So yeah, it's been something that I would definitely recommend anybody who's looking into media to explore.
Thank you. Lucy, how's the experience been for you?
Yeah, very similar. I think I'd kind of heard of barter before, but never ever been able to get my head around it. It was like a dark art that I just couldn't understand. But like Gary said, you guys explained it really well, and sort of by showing credible case studies, I think that really helped me definitely to understand how it could be relevant for our business. I think the biggest thing for us has been that it's enabled us to support our wider portfolio, and not just necessarily our 3 core pillar brands, which is where the investment has been historically. So some of the smaller brands or smaller parts of our business have benefited from media where they perhaps wouldn't have had that opportunity before. So it's really great, and something that we'll continue to work closely with you guys, but we're relatively new to it. We're only about a year in, and last year was obviously a strange year. So I think lots more opportunities to come for us, but with Active.
That's wonderful. I mean, I think Gary and Lucy, you probably represent a typical, relatively new client. Tony's had huge amounts of experience working across lots of brands in the past. Tony, I mean, what would because of your experience, I mean, what would you say to someone that hasn't used corporate trade before?
Well, definitely echo what Lucy and Gareth said. I think very smart way to trade parts of your media. Lucy mentioned dark art, and I think you do, when you first encounter barter, you do end up thinking, oh, you sort of open that Pandora's box and think, I wonder what I'm going to see inside. And is it pretty scary? Shall I just shut it again and go away? But actually, it's a really smart way to trade. And I think the two things for me are firstly, any sector. I mean, obviously, I've worked in a number of sectors, and I've found you can make barter work anywhere. So, you know, fashion, food, homewares, so big items, small items. You know, I've found a way, or you've helped us found a way to make barter work. So that's number one. If you're sat there in a sector thinking maybe it doesn't work for me, or maybe it might apply to me, I think that's wrong. I think you'll find a way of doing something and making things better and helping you and getting yourself more media value. The second thing I'd say is that actually the last year might have been a benefit. The unpredictability of plans. I mean, what media owners like all of us, it's like sales and turnover in Ireland. What media owners like is consistency and predictability, don't they, of media coming in and knowing where it's come from, and that client's going to spend that amount. And, you know, and of course that's been blown apart like many things. And so that means the opportunity to almost give them new money and extra money and to trade that through barter is even greater than a year ago, I would say. So that represents a huge opportunity. So I think barter has always had a place and always delivered good value. But I think now, probably more so than ever, because media owners will be sniffing out extra money and new money from clients, and that means a lot of brands will have money that hasn't been in the market for, or is unpredictable to be in the market, and then you can barter it.
Yeah, thank you. That's really, really clear, and yeah, I hope your predictions come true as well. Obviously, so we kind of move on to future facing. So 21st of June has been recently called the Big Bang, where basically we all get, you know, let out. And it could herald probably the largest summer party we've ever seen, hopefully, fingers crossed. So with kind of optimism in the air, but a bruised economy in tow, kind of what's next for your business? And Lucy, why don't we come to you first?
I think so. The kind of immediate next is supporting the on-trade and really trying to drive consumers back to the on-trade so that we support all our hospitality. We are seeing that events are opening up, so whereby the last 12 months have been devoid of events, or those that have run have been a real nightmare because of changing tiers or whatever. I think that there's a real sense of people wanting to get back and wanting to get back out there. So we are appearing at a few events over the summer, which have already been kind of oversubscribed. So that's exciting. I mean, it gives an indication of how people just want to get out and socialise again.
Feel free to promote them, by the way. Feel free to promote them.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to be at Pub in the Park, which is kind of all around the UK. And I think, that would be a great event. It's outside, so hopefully that helps. And yeah, as long as we stay well away from lockdown and tiering systems, I think it should be all right. But yes, I mean, social distancing at something like that, I'm not sure if that will. Luckily, I think the restrictions will be over by then. Here's hoping, because once people have had a few drinks, it's quite hard to social distance, I think, for everyone. But it'd be nice, live music, live food, and live drinks. So that should be fun. Yeah, and then I think more growth. Hopefully, we're putting more infrastructure behind Slurp, our online platform, D2C, to try and make sure that we are keeping up with the demand there, and how that's going to move and how that's going to progress in the next 12 to 18 months. Making sure that we're making our platform really easy to shop and what consumers expect, because they are very used to wine arriving at their door now. So we've got to make sure that we get that right, and the delivery's right, and the packaging and all of those elements. And then I think for us, it's really about continuing to work with this flexible approach. So we have got a relatively diverse business across off-trade, on-trade and e-commerce, and making sure that we continue and support all elements of the business, because, you know, one year it could be that something happens that's completely out of your control and one area of the business is fine, but the other two aren't. Or I think it's always really great to have that diversity to draw on and to support all areas. So yeah, I think lots of just that continuing that omni-channel approach as well, that so that we're not just fixated on one media channel or one communication angle. It's making sure that we're tapping into those. I think it's just, I suppose, like diverse approach is probably applies to both our business and our marketing comms.
Yeah, really interesting. Thank you. Gary, what's the future look like for you?
I guess echoing Lucy, I think we're very much still in a growth mindset. I think you know, conscious that we've obviously had a favourable 12 months, and that, you know, you mentioned the bruised economy, and that might come back to bite later in the year. So it's something that we're mindful of as well. But I guess, like, in terms of growth, like our unprompted awareness is still relatively low in the UK, and like maybe I can pick up on one of the questions in the Q&A about, you know, do we think that the success of the last 12 months is going to mean that more e-commerce brands are buying above the line media? I think that's the case. It certainly is for us. I think you know, that I think that the changes that are coming into Facebook and you know, the kind of new era of privacy in online marketing, I think is going to force like e-commerce brands into more traditional media. And so, like, our focus is on building brand awareness, which is still, as I say, relatively low even in the UK, but internationally that's only amplified. So there's a lot of work to do, and we believe there's a huge opportunity to grow, especially across Europe. I think our revenue is something like 1% of the total flower like market in Europe. So there's still incredible headroom for us to aim for, and, you know, at some stage maybe perhaps beyond Europe as well. But who knows? I think that's a lot further down the line. Yeah,
I know. I did read that the European flower market was worth 22 billion, and it made me feel that maybe I'm not sending enough flowers because I'm a bit percentage of that. Anyway, Tony, on to you. Where are the opportunities, do you think, going forward? Where would you want to position yourself now as a marketing director? Which area of retail would you like to be in?
Oh, I just think more a sector or retailer that has ambition, really. I mean, I think you've got to and is actively looking to looking to change in terms of, you know, and change ahead. I think now's the point for any retailer or brand to think, like, what's going to happen in the next 3 years, isn't it? Well, maybe not 3 to 5 years, that's probably too far ahead. But I think thinking how your sector will change once, you know, it's one thing about mid-June onwards. It's another thing what will now change in the next 2 years, because I think we've been taught that stuff can change so rapidly. Actually, you've got to start predicting how your business and sector will change in the coming 2 to 3 years, and then finding a route back from that, finding a path back from that in terms of what to change, the next change. If we sit there and think we've cracked it in the last year because we've made all these changes, then, you know, most businesses will be dead, won't they, within 3 years, I would say. So I think, for me, it's about a brand or business that just, you know, it's that excitement of part digital transformation, but general transformation. Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you. Just looking at the time, and probably just touch on a couple of questions. Lucy, a question for you. With so much choice and individual taste surrounding wine, how does Slurp compete with those independent wine retailers who offer expert advice for the walk-in customer? Quite an interesting one.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I believe there's still absolutely a role for those independent wine merchants that offer all of that expertise when you walk in, and there's, you know, you can't kind of substitute that experience of going in and into that environment surrounded by all of those wines in the digital environment. So the challenge for us with Slurp is to make sure, you know, we've got thousands and thousands of wines. So the choice is broader when you go online, because obviously an online stockist can hold much more stock. So immediately you've got wider choice, but how then do you sift through that choice and understand the wines? And that is a challenge for the digital space. But so what we've got to do is make sure that customers can find the information on the wines that they want. So whether that is an online sommelier or really great wine write-ups. We look at virtual tastings as well, videos and video tastings. So there's actually lots you can do online and with digital format. It's just making sure that we've got all of that. And as we say, we've grown so quickly with SERP, so some of it we're catching up with. And there's lots of the ways to kind of maximise our site. So we're working on lots of areas. And when you've got thousands of wines, there's quite a lot of backlog that we've got to do on those write-ups. But we're on our way, we're on it.
I'll just skip straight through to the virtual tasting. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's good.
Really good. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, so I'll be looking that up later. Very good. A question, I guess, for anyone really. Do Active work alongside an existing media agency or plan and buy for you? Okay, yeah, I mean, actually, yeah, I mean, that's a fairly obvious one, but we work with both Lucy and Gary, we work with your existing media agencies, don't we? And that, I mean, if you want to sort of add anything to that, presumably that's reasonably smooth, just for anyone that hasn't come across the process before.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, from our experience, it's been pretty seamless. Like, you guys work directly with Good Stuff, who's our media agency, and it's kind of one conversation rather than like lots and lots of different conversations. So it's been very seamless for us.
Yeah, the same. Our media agency is Wavemaker, and actually, I don't know if it's the same for other media agencies, but Wavemaker have someone dedicated to barter within the agency. So they've clearly recognised that this is a big opportunity and that more and more brands are seeing this. So yeah, it's really seamless for us because there's experts within Active, and then there's an expert within our media agency as well, which is great.
Wonderful, fantastic. Well, I think that that concludes it. Thank you very, very much. I mean, what I've taken out of it is, if we look at the story of Bloom and Wild, the pace has just, I mean, the pandemic's been kind, if we just look at it from a revenue point of view, and the pace has really allowed you to, speed up and invest in new areas. The flexibility that you went through, Lucy, particularly, I think, with the business as well as marketing, clearly, I think any marketer is going to be exhausted after probably the year we've all had in marketing, having to adapt that quickly. But I also think, you've got to have the back end sorted out. And clearly that's something that, Freixenet Copestick was very clever in doing. So, and that's amazing. And Tony, I think your views on the sector as a whole, where the opportunities are, again, obviously around change, needing to change, and that need to change and having the skills to do that, I think is going to be really interesting from a marketeer's point of view going forward. Lots of other discussions. We've been really interesting. I feel like we could go on for hours, but I've got to get to a virtual tasting seminar. No, I'm kidding. But no, thank you. Really, really thank you, both three of you, for your opinions. Let's hope we can all get out in the summer and some of the old life resumes. And good luck with everything to you three. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll hopefully see you soon. Thanks everyone.
Power your advertising. Working with Active International enables you to fund your advertising using your company's own products, assets, or even services. We have over 30 years' experience connecting and bringing value to businesses all over the globe, helping many brands scale up into household names. Want to achieve more from your marketing spend? Contact Active International today.